Okay, everyone, you're gonna like this because I brought in a master playwright for some culture because you all need it. You all need more culture in your life. A man who started off as an industry specialist and an actor became a magnificent playwright, Martin Casella. How are you, Martin?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Nice to talk to you, Ethan.
Yeah, you look good. You look like you're in like your office where
I
the
am.
magic happens. Best
I am.
playwright ever.
I have a
What's
poster behind me on the wall for my favorite movie, Chinatown. Jack
is
Nicholson
that
and
your
Faye Dunaway, Roman
okay?
Polanski.
So is that your favorite movie?
It is. I actually have five favorite movies, so I know that's
What are
favorite
the
implies
five? What
there's
are the
only
five out of
one.
the gate?
The five right out of the gate. My five favorite movies are. I consider Chinatown or my favorite. I also love the movie Nashville. I also love Godfather 1 and 2, but those are combined together in one. I love Lawrence of Arabia, and for back old classic Hollywood movies, I love It's a Wonderful Life and Casablanca.
Okay,
So
so Casablanca, we agree on. It's a Wonderful Life has some merit, though I do think that guy's kind of a human doormat through most of it.
yeah,
Lawrence of Arabia is also the favorite film of John Anderson of Yes, and he and I have arguments about it because he refuses to believe the historical evidence that Lawrence knew what was going to happen to that part of the world. He was in on
right,
it. He knew,
right,
but in the movie plays that he doesn't. And
right, exactly.
so that, but cinematically speaking, that is a great film. I think John Box was the production designer on it. And if
Yeah,
I'm not
he
mis
was, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's the famous story he told where they spent like 2 days trying to roll a Rolls Royce into frame so the R on the wheel
yeah.
would be straight, like that kind of meticulous.
The
David Lean.
thing Ethan, the thing I love about it the most, in addition to the just spectacular movie making, is that I love one of the most famous lines in the film is when whether it's Omar Sharif or one of the the hundreds of people he interacts with in the Middle East, he keeps saying nothing is written, nothing is written,
Hmm.
nothing is written, and yet the whole movie is structured as a flash forward to him on that motorcycle. Where anybody who knows what happened to him and how he died, the whole movie intersperses cuts to him on his way on this motorcycle basically disproving what he has spent the whole movie saying is the way he lives on that nothing is written. And I love that about the movie. I love
That's.
that.
I also love how they shot that. I love how it starts with the credits, like it's a
Oh,
down
yeah,
angle, and then he. I mean, that's a
yeah.
fantastic movie to watch. I love, you know, I love the cast, although you couldn't cast it that way today,
You can't
nor
cast it
should
that way
you.
today. No.
But man, Omar Sharif is really brilliant in it, especially with his logic. I mean, the intro for Omar Sharif coming towards the well,
Yeah, exactly.
one of the best ever. Maybe Darth Vader ranks up there. There's some actors that get an intro like that, but that is one of the all-time greats. And
Yeah,
O'Toole's performance is fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
uh, a friend of mine has his O'Toole story because O'Toole wanted to play Tron for Disney, but
Oh,
O'Toole is pretty brilliant in it. Now, the other movie you mentioned is Chinatown. Now, James Hong is in that. And I
yes,
remember he
he is
told,
still alive at what, a
yes,
hundred almost or something? Yeah.
yeah, the one guy that you can connect every single person in Hollywood to. It's not Kevin Bacon, it's James Hong.
Yes,
But he was
absolutely.
telling me he had to do a thing where he just turned towards a door and he would do it 3 or 4 times. And suddenly Polanski's like, okay, we're going to do it again. And he's like, Roman, I don't understand. I keep doing the same thing. And Roman Polanski's response to him was, you're not thinking the right thoughts,
Whoa.
which only I guess I took to mean he sees something in the eyes when he's
Yes,
turning around.
yes.
So, but that is a movie people love. Now, that is a very dark movie, Martin.
Yes, I love movies. For an upgoing, pleasant, friendly guy, a lot
Yeah,
of the movies that I like are very, very dark, and many of them are obviously not Lawrence of Arabia, but that's pretty dark too. But the other ones, It's a Wonderful Life is about a guy who's going to commit suicide on Christmas Eve,
yeah, yeah.
and we all know The Godfather. Both of the movies are about, this is America. And Nashville, but Nashville's the same too. And Chinatown, basically, having grown up in Los Angeles, I don't know, are you from LA?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Van Nuys.
Chinatown is to me is just the best LA movie ever. It tells us how we started, how and where we ended up, you know?
Did you ever work with Peter Jason?
No.
Okay,
That's a
so
familiar
Peter
name, but no.
Peter Jason did like 200 movies, and he worked with your old boss Spielberg in that Amazing Stories episode about the bomber. More on that later, but he said that he grew up in L.A. and he was at one point he worked with both Orson Welles and John Huston, who is the villain. John
Yeah,
Huston, by the way, gave us one of the greatest sports movies ever, and that is basically Victory. It's the second greatest sports movie after Rocky in my mind, but John
yeah.
Huston delivered that incredible film. But he said John Huston had to start his day with two bottles of vodka at morning in the morning. Like that's how he got going, which is kind of funny. And but he is so ominous in that film. But Nichols, everyone's great in that movie. That movie's
Everyone. Everybody.
um
Burt Young, I mean,
yeah.
I think it's Diane Ladd. Diane Ladd, for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, you don't want to give it away who Diane Ladd is, but every little role in that film is just fantastic.
Now
Even the
you're hitting it out of the park with movies of the 70s, which is seen
yeah,
as most.
that's totally sweet spot. Those four of those movies are from the 70s.
Dude, I have
Yeah.
to tell you something that's happened to me, Martin, and like I would have told you working at Warner Brothers, the 70s was the greatest decade in film. And I think in terms of innovation and storytelling, it's a tough one to argue with. Some people will point out the year 1939, an epic year as
Yeah.
well. There was a different system in place for 1939 versus the 70s. So I don't like to compare the two because one was a conveyor belt where you're going to start hitting some lottery tickets. And the other one was sort of the embracing of independent artists and storytelling. But I will tell you, as I've gotten older, and I'm almost ashamed to admit this, I think I lean more towards 80s movies as an older guy. And maybe that's because those are more upbeat for the most part, except for one of my favorites, The Thing. But I look at like, Empire Strikes Back, Platoon, The Goonies. I don't know why I just sort of Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Aliens, but I would tell you at Warner Brothers, you were right. The 70s, 70s, 70s. And I loved The French Connection and The
Oh yeah.
Exorcist and
All of those movies.
uh,
I mean, yeah, we just watched The Conversation a couple weeks ago,
Where's the Bug?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the last 5 minutes of that movie is so creepy and horrifying and brilliant filmmaking. And plus my by even in the 70s and the 80s, my favorite actor was Gene Hackman. I absolutely Gene Hackman. I love Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson and Gene Hackman in the 70s are just
Uh,
the best.
have
I
you
mean,
worked with either one of them?
no, my dad worked in the film industry and he did a couple films with Gene Hackman and he would always have wonderful Gene Hackman stories.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, never got to work with either of them. So, but
So I was on a film with Hackman, one of his more forgettable ones, which is My Nature, their replacements with Keanu Reeves. True
yeah.
professional. Through
Oh
everything
yeah.
was about, what was amazed me about him and Jack Nicholson together is they're always about like what you need it in one take, then you will get it in one take. And there was no like pontification of how we should do this. It's like let's get the thing in the can, and then if the director says we can experiment, we can experiment. I love that Jack Nicholson moment too. My friend Leon Vitali, who worked for Kubrick, worked with Nicholson on The Shining. Leon cast the little boy. There's that great moment. You've probably seen it in Vivian Kubrick's like behind the scenes where
Yes, yes.
he's handed a ton of notes at like 10:30 at night or 11 at night, and she's like, "Stanley would like you to go over these for tomorrow's shoot," and he's like, "Oh, thank you so much, Margaret. I was just wondering what I was going to do with myself between 2 and 4 in the morning this morning." But total professional, like totally like mocking it in like a fun-loving way. But you're Jack Nicholson's kind of actor, buddy. I could see you holding frame with him.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I'm
It's funny
not.
the story you just told. Well, okay, I will address that in 1 second. The story you told me reminded me of a show that I was working on, a theater musical, and I have to be very careful because the person the story's about is a wonderful human being and a lovely guy, but he didn't like a song that the composer had written for him. It was a big 11 o'clock number, which is if for musical fans, it's the big number near the end of the show where the hero puts all the pieces together. And
Ah,
anyway, and
theater insight for everybody. That's
yes,
good.
yeah, there
That's
you
good.
go, theater insight. And yeah, it's so he he said to her, you know, I'm a songwriter and I've written a lot of songs and I just took a shot at this and oh that like you don't do that to famous people who've written huge winning Tony winning Broadway musicals and things.
Well, how did
So
Sondheim take that?
well, no. I mean, I can't even use any names at all of who it was, but I'll just say she looked at him and what in her wonderful Southern way, dripping honey, just said, "Oh, thank you so much. This is so thoughtful of you. Yeah, that's very, very kind." And right in front of him, she walked over and ripped it up and dropped it in a trash can. And it was like, oh. So
Wow.
that's akin to Nicholson going, "Yes, I have just planned what I am going to do."
I
He's
think
no, he come on. I don't think there's any actor alive that had a run like what Nicholson had from 69 to about seven. I'd go to 80, 81. I mean, those roles, whether it was everything from Easy Rider going all the way up to Terms of Endearment. I mean, just amazing.
yeah. I mean, it's fairly remarkable, especially I mean, I think what he learned with Corman was so invaluable. I think people like to knock those movies, but I
Yeah.
think what he learned in terms of being prepared, especially on Little Shop of Horrors, which was shot in 2 days, it's like the actor has to always be ready to go. Like that's rule number one, be ready. And so many of them are now of the star mentality where they show up late, they're not prepared, their ideas trump whatever's been planned out. And it's just the actor is ready, the actor goes, and the actor delivers. And that's Nicholson. I mean, everything I've heard about Nicholson has been fantastic. I never had, when I was at Warner Brothers, never worked with him on anything, but he was really held in high regard socially. He was held
Yeah.
in high regard too as a person. That's unique. But one of the stories I do like about him is the one Rob Reiner always tells on A Few Good Men, where they had wrapped him, he was done, and he had said something. Rob had said something like to the, "Oh, I wish I had one more thing." And Nicholson says, "Rob, just tell me what you need." And he's like, "Well, is there any way? Uh, God, could you come back tomorrow? Is there any way we can arrange for you to come?" He's like, "Just tell me what you need." Nicholson showed up 8 in the morning, ready to go on what was a free day. Now, to you and me, people just hearing this, that sounds like no big deal, right? We're blue
Right.
collar guys. But the fact of the matter is, that's a huge thing for an actor of that caliber to do. Go around his agents, do another day on a film, whatever the direct. I mean, that says so much about him. Just to be that. God, what kind of plastic times are we living in, Martin? Where we champion what should be the kind of generosity everyone should offer up, but
Yeah.
Nicholson displayed it in a situation that most actors are not careless, care,
What do you
care, care. What's the word for character? But it's a demonstration. Oh.
demonstrating your character? I don't know. I'm sure there's a good word for
Characteristically,
it.
when
Uh,
most actors are really not that generous, I guess is how I would leave.
well,
But you're a guy. You deal with a lot of people on the stage. I mean,
yeah.
you have worked for the greatest filmmaker of our generation.
Yeah, I was talking to someone last week, a reporter in England who wanted some information about something, and I forget sometimes what that I had 3.5 years where I got to work either on a Spielberg film for Spielberg and then on a Spielberg film again
Right.
over a period from late 78 to around 82. And I, when you're working on something, you're working on it and you're right in the middle of it. And you can't see
Right.
where you are. And I think back on it now and I was like, how did why didn't I turn into a, big fat-headed conceited person? And it was like it was a job. And between Stephen and friends of mine tease me still all these years later. I still call him that. He was my boss, but he was also a friend. And Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall and those three people. I mean, I saw them and with bits and pieces of Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale and George Lucas for on and off for 4 years, almost every day. And they were just people. I mean, Stephen. uh, yeah, by that point we'd already had Duel and Jaws and Close Encounters and Sugarland Express. And I just kind of went, oh, this is the guy I work for. I mean, friends of mine would go, well, what's that like? And I'm like, well, you run around and you do crazy things. And for the fact it was the late 70s and the early 80s, this is something I do say on the record to people, which is um, I would have a hard time under any circumstance saying anything unpleasant or mean or nasty about him and that group of people. I mean, they were all wonderful. I they were great and hard. It was hard. It was really, really hard work. And some of it was silly. You know, sometimes I would be somebody, I won't say who it was, somebody would point to a picture of a pair of skis that had, you know, a holding area in them so you could fill them up with whiskey while you were skiing. And you know, I spent
Oh
an
wait,
entire day of my life on phone calls before the internet, looking for skis that you could hide whiskey in. And but at a certain point, it all just seems like, oh, that's what I do. You know, that's
who
yes.
was that you did that for? I've heard that story from someone. Who?
Um, Kathleen Kennedy. She wanted to buy a gift for Stephen for like
Uh,
Christmas or
uh,
something, and she
that
thought,
ski poles you can put. I just saw Frank Marshall
oh, Dr.
at a
Fantasy.
memorial. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Oh, Frank is
So how did it all
wonderful.
start with you? Like, you know, because some people, intrepid playwright, right?
Yeah.
Technical, technical filmmaker. You've learned the trade from the back door. You managed to work your way through the stage side of the industry. But people know you as an actor, you know,
Yeah.
and by the way, have you made the journey to Mecca for Poltergeist fans? Have you been to the house since they've opened it up?
No, I've heard about it. I'm still pretty close to Oliver Robbins, who
I just talked to him. Yeah, he
he
was there.
I love Oliver. I Oliver and I have done three or four Comic Cons together. We got to spend 5 days in London last year, just you know, having all of our bills
Yeah,
paid and signing autographs for people who came hundreds of miles away
yeah, yeah.
in London. I haven't been to the house. No, I don't. When I'm in LA, I usually am dealing with family issues and visits and things like that or work. So I know Oliver's going to be there on Halloween.
Is
He,
he?
yeah, there was just a
Oh,
big thing
see,
on Facebook that he's going to be at the house on Halloween handing out trick or treat candy. So
yes, and probably signing his new book, Sunset
and
Scares.
probably signing his new book
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
that's how you do it,
So,
Martin, right? You get yourself back into the landscape right when you've got that book, and
oh
boom,
yeah,
it's a nuclear bomb.
oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
I saw he was there. You know, it's because you worked with Toby, and Toby was my buddy.
Yeah, I love
Um,
Toby. Toby is
I
fantastic.
I loved him too. You know, it's interesting. I'm connected to Poltergeist through one of the actors, Sonny Landham, who is the reason we have this show. He went on to be Billy the Indian in Predator, but people sometimes forget, but I'll remind him, he was one of the guys who put the pool in the back of the
Yeah,
house.
in the back. Yeah,
And that was probably even after he was a villain for Walter Hill, probably another friend of yours, in Southern Comfort, and he had like non-speaking roles as like these very violent heavies, and but he would go on obviously to do Predator in another 48 hours before that. But and then Toby, who I think, you know, to hear all the talk about the film itself, it's for me as a friend of Toby, it in a weird way it comes off as disrespectful. I know it's not meant to,
yeah.
but knowing who Toby was, it kind of pisses me off a little. I didn't mean to talk over you, Martin.
No, no, that's okay. I mean, I always say when you and I talked before, except for one little funny shot that was a second unit shot that ended up not being in the movie. You know, Toby did all my stuff. Toby was the one who directed me all the time. I mean,
Yeah,
Stephen in
uh,
the beginning would, you know, kind of toss out notes and things, but then Beatrice Straight made a comment and you know, and one day and she just after a couple days of shooting and she said, you know, we just need directions one person, that's all. And Stephen was
right.
like, "Oh, of course." You know, and then he went off to go do ET. And Toby was he had for a guy who made horror films, he was so wonderful and sunny
Yes,
and
yes.
charming and you know, lovely guy.
Well, I always felt like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was his claim to fame, and Leatherface, Gunnar Hansen in that was
Yeah.
like our backup Santa Claus for our annual Christmas event for homeless kids. So he was a hero too. But hearing those guys talk about it, it always seemed like that was the movie we made because that's what we really could make at the
Yeah.
time, where we were at and what we were doing, and as far we had to do something that got in people's faces. And I kind of got the impression with Toby that he would have like loved to have taken a crack at something different, but started there and ended up where he ended up. But I always liked him as a, especially and who's not going to defer to Steven Spielberg on a set?
Yeah.
Who's not going to
Well,
turn? Everyone would. Like, what do
he
you
also
think of this shot? It's
he also wrote the movie, a great big
yes,
hunks of it, and did the outline and the treatment and did rewrites and I mean the guys who wrote it wrote the actual screenplay, but and that's something I think people forget about. But maybe it's because of the auteur theory, maybe it's because we grew up with all these, the great films made in the classic times, golden age, but
yeah,
films are collaborative. I mean, everyone from the guy who's the in the credits and people who listen to this and see movies, and there always used to be a greenery credit. The guys who
yes.
made greenery on the soundstage, and that, I mean, it's collaborative. It's actors saying to a director, or to a director and a costume designer, I really don't want to wear that. That's just
Right.
not who I am. I mean, yeah, Karen Allen did that on Raiders of the Lost Ark. Originally, she that's why she's in that wedding gown that she wears for the last half or so of the film, because they had her in something else, and I was there when that happened, and she said, I don't want to wear that. And
Again, one of the all-time great casts,
all
playing
time,
outside their nationalities. By the way,
all time,
I know everyone thinks like Freeman is French, and
yes. And they
and
all
there's
think is Arabic, but
yeah, John,
John
right,
Rhys
Dave.
Davis. Yeah, yeah,
And there's also that great British actor who plays that Nazi, like Gestapo henchman. It's like that the guy who has the great scene where he pulls out what looks like a torture device, but it's a hanger for his jacket. Like
yeah,
so many brilliant act. I mean, it's a really kind of like a demonstration that great actors really are so incredibly deceptive on screen.
yes.
But as to backtrack a little bit, or actually to move forward from that, how did you find yourself in Poltergeist? Like, how did that work out for you? Because you are pretty powerful in the movie.
Uh, because I mean, it's a long story. I'll try to keep it short. When I got out of college, I had a theater degree in acting, and I kind of had an unpleasant last year, a senior year in college,
Hmm.
for a number of reasons. And I when I graduated, I was like, I never want to be in a play. I never want to see a play. I don't want to go near a theater. So my dad kind of said, "Well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? You just went to school." And I said, "I don't know." And so he said, "Well, why don't you come work for me for a little while?" And he was starting on a new film out at Warner Brothers. I think it's Warner Brothers in Columbia or Warner Brothers in Universal, whatever 1941 was. And so I worked in as a dispatcher in the transportation department.
Hmm.
And our office was, believe it or not, it's so funny to think back then, 45, 46, 47 years ago. Um, our office was right next to Steven's office, which in this funny little hallway in a building across the street from Warner Brothers. And so I got to see him all the time when Kathy Kennedy became his assistant. She and I hung out all the time. We got to be really good friends, went to the movies all the time. And I saw Steven all the time because when he would finish shooting or he'd take breaks on the sound stages, he'd walk across the street from Warner Brothers and hang out in his office, and we'd all play video games together. And and after all the production shoot, we had to do about 4 or 5 months of miniatures. And my dad said something to the guy who was the assistant director, and the next thing I know, I was on there being a third assistant director, getting my hours to try to be in the DGA to be an assistant director, which that would not have suited me, but it was a good time. And at the end of all that, Steven said, "Oh, I want you to work with me on Raiders. And we're not going to start for 4 months. So in the meantime, I'm producing a film called Used Cars was written and directed and produced by Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who had written 1941. and I knew them really well. And so I went off and worked in Arizona for 3.5 months and got to be friends with Kurt Russell and Deb Harmon and Jack Warden and that whole cast. And then I literally finished that shoot on a Saturday morning in Phoenix and got in my car and drove home and had Sunday off. And then I was at Lucasfilm in North Hollywood, California at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And we started working on Raiders. And at the end of all that, I had a great time. I got to go all over the world. I got to live in London for 3 months. I got to spend a month and a half in Africa. And it was great. And we did all the pre-production on Poltergeist and ET. So, I got to do all the fun stuff like drive they would do sessions and they would tape all the sessions and with between Melissa Matheson and Steven about what ET was going to be about, and then somebody would type them up and then we'd take them to where Harrison Ford and Melissa Matheson lived. And so I got to see all that and with the two guys that wrote Poltergeist. And then I finally had gotten to a point where I thought, okay, no, this is fun. I've done this for 4 years. I really want to, and a really good friend of mine who knew me really well, who both she and her husband had worked in filmmaking for a long time, and they both said, you know what, you need to go do your own stuff. So I left, and Stephen was very funny, and he said a couple funny things, and he said, well, go do what you want. That's what's important in life. Go do that. And I stayed friends with Kathleen and Frank and Stephen. And about 5 months later, I'd been in a play in LA and gotten great reviews in the LA Times. And I had written a play that I put together a theater company and we were all going to work together. And out of the blue, a phone call came from Fenton Feinberg, the casting agents, and Marcy Liroff, who was one of the casting directors there, said, "Oh, they want you to come in and read for this role. They've auditioned all these people and nobody could get it." And I said, "Oh, wow, whoa, okay, sure." So on the way to the interview, I practiced, screaming and yelling and breathing heavily because I kind of knew I knew what the script was about and I knew what the role did. And I went in there and they did a tape, and Marcy Liroff, who I'm still in contact with, she's a wonderful human being. And she turned to me and she goes, "That was really good. Why did you work for all those years as somebody's assistant? You're an actor. You should be." I said, "Well, I kind of put it on the back burner." And then a couple months later, I got invited to the very first small private screening of Raiders for those of us who were kind of around Steven. And Steven was there. And that's when he told me that I'd been cast in Poltergeist. And so it's you never know. I always tell students that I work with, you just never know. Keep
You
saying
never
yes.
know.
You never know. Say yes to things. I mean, don't
Yes.
stay in abusive positions. You probably saw it too. I was very lucky. I never had a phone thrown at my head. I never had a stapler thrown at my head, or was socked or punched, or had to go get drugs or prostitutes. I worked with the bunch of the best people in the entire world.
Yeah,
So
I never dealt with that either, honestly.
no, and I have friends who did have to do that,
Yeah.
especially in the late 70s and early 80s.
I don't know. You
And
can't really match a stapler throwing story to Spielberg. I don't think you can really
no,
connect the
never,
dots on that. But
never, no. And Kathy's the same way. Kathy's wonderful, and Frank is so great.
so,
So yeah. So
so
that's how
you
I
get,
got there.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're right about the theory, or about the practice of saying yes to everything. I tell people that too. Like,
Oh yeah.
it can be the smallest job in the world. The connections are invaluable. You should always volunteer. Get involved everywhere on every level you possibly
Yep.
can, especially when you're starting out. It's amazing how many people are like, well, if I'm not paid or if it's not what I want to do, but I'm like, my opportunities came the same way. Just yes, yes, yes. I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll be there. And it worked out. That movie, though, man, and your moments in it are fantastic. So I was curious because I knew you had worked in the business, and I didn't know if it was one of those moments like Milius was famous for this too, and we both know him.
Both know
Um,
him. Yes.
yeah, and he would like look at me sometimes as a non-actor and be like, "I think I've got something for you to do in this script," and I'd be like, well, I'm not your guy. I don't. He's like,
Yeah.
no, no, you don't have to even say anything. I just need you to have a blindfold on with blood, and you need to swing a shovel. He would say something like that.
Yes.
And so I didn't know if it was one of those moments where Spielberg was looking at you and goes, you know who captures the essence of this moment is Martin. Or if, but now, and then maybe they read you or like worked you in some tests. But I mean, you certainly held your own. I mean, what's great about your footage in the movie is you're in great scenes with great actors. Beatrice Straight, I don't know what she was like as a human being, but in that film in particular, she brings a lot of power.
Yes. She was uh one of the kindest, loveliest. She was
Yeah.
funny. She used to, because she came from another time period, basically, from 40s Hollywood, and then she made films in the 50s and 60s. And she always said, I worked 2 days on network. Winning an Oscar was literally the last thing on my mind ever. And so she came from this theater tradition of you treat everybody really well and you're kind. And the second or third day of work, we were on a lunch break, and I said, Would you mind if I came over to your trailer and would you tell me stories about what it was like to be on Broadway in the 1940s and early 50s?" And she said, "Oh, my darling, yes." Now she was from, I think she was from a very, very wealthy upscale new, I think, family that had been in New York forever, and she had that sort of mid-Atlantic accent that I'm guessing she probably got in drama school somewhere. And I ended up going to her dressing room every other day, and she would just tell me amazing stories. She also grew up in a time where people had wonderful, in Hollywood in the 30s and 40s and 50s. Sunday was your day off. And people would still get together because those times it was like a family. When you're working on a film, it gets to be like a family, especially if you're in a lot of it. That doesn't apply if you have one scene or one day's work, but when you're
Right.
in a film for 5 or 6 weeks, you get to be a family. And Beatrice had parties on Sunday afternoons in her house up in the Hollywood Hills that looked like a French chateau. And there was a swimming pool and catered meal, and all these wonderful people would be there.
Mm.
It was like a salon, basically, that you would read about in Paris. There were all these amazing people that she
Well,
had
give
worked.
it up. Who'd you meet? Come on.
I'm trying to think. There were other playwrights there.
Mm.
I think back on that, and I it was the ambiance more than the famous people. I mean, her husband had been a famous actor on Broadway and had been in the
Yes.
original production of Can, and he had stories. And I met this amazing British actor he was probably in his late 70s by then, and he had met everyone in London theater. And as a theater guy, I loved hearing all that. And she told I'll tell you one last thing about that. Beatrice had her Oscar in the living room over the fireplace mantle, but she also had another weird award there, and a bunch of us were talking to her and said, "What? Well, gee, was it hard to win the Oscar?" She goes, "No, I showed up, and it was Sidney Lumet, right? And I had 3 scenes with William Holden. Come on." And she said, the hardest award I ever won in my life was when she was on a television show. I forget. It was one of those early 80s shows like Dallas. And she said, we went on Family Feud, on the TV show Family Feud. She said, me and 4 other people from the show, and we won that week, and we won something like, $50,000 for charity. She said, that
Mm.
was the hardest award I ever won in my life. And that was right next to her Oscar on her mantle.
Hey, man, you had to be on point to succeed on Family Feud. I mean,
That was one of
that
my favorite shows. I used to go to the tapings of that.
did you? Yeah,
Yeah,
a friend of mine actually
my
produced
family
it.
went and auditioned for a taping, and
Yeah.
one of my crazy cousins was there, and yeah, we didn't do very well, but I loved
Oh,
that.
see, your crazy cousin would probably get you hired now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, that's
But
the reality. The reality shows, they always want some crazy person on there. All the reality shows.
I had a friend who went on it, and she said the hardest part was she had to kiss Richard Dawson.
Ah,
That she did not like that part. That was her complaint. But it's funny because we only knew Richard Dawson from that show. We didn't realize he was with William Holden in The Devil's Brigade and had done all these movies. and was actually a pretty accomplished actor by the time he got to that paycheck.
Was
But going
wasn't
back,
he was he on Hogan's Heroes? Am I crazy to
oh, I
think?
think
I
he
think so.
was
I think
actually,
he was. Yeah, he
you
was
know,
like he was the British prisoner. Yeah.
yeah. And he was opposite Schwarzenegger, another guy we've worked with, who in Running Man,
Yes.
uh, doing his game show best
Yeah.
to game show it up. Let me ask you this too, since
Yeah.
Poltergeist is I mean, that is like the Hallmark haunted house movie. It's one of the best. I
Yes.
mean, I would say I'm partial because our friend was Richard Johnson, so I'm partial to The Haunting by Robert Wise, but
The
that's
Robert.
also,
Yeah. It's a great movie. Great.
yes, really hard to top that, even with, when you have like high caliber talent as you did on the Poltergeist. But I would say Poltergeist is in that conversation. I was blown away by it, and it actually comes across. And I know seems to be inspired by Twilight Zones, but listen, if you're
Mhm.
going to be inspired by anything, Rod Serling is
Yeah.
the guy who should be your inspiration. But it is so plausible the way it unfolds and the terror and the shooting. But give me a moment on the set with Toby Hooper that you remember between you and him, since I miss him. I really do miss that guy, and you had the privilege of working with him. I only knew him socially, but what's a moment between the two of you on that set where Toby
Well,
was being Toby?
Toby, on the first day of shooting, Toby kind of pulled me aside and said, I know you come from the theater. I know you've done lots of plays. He said, we're having some issues with you finding your light. And he said, I know this is your first film. And I was very nervous. And I'm acting with Beatrice Straight and Craig T. Nelson and Jo Beth Williams and Richard Lawson. And it was in a scene. The first thing we did was a scene where the coffee cup moves and all that, and I have to do the gag with
Yeah.
the camera lens, and it was an incredibly long day. It was the first thing we shot, and I I had been on sound stages and watched movies being made and worked on movies being made. Boy, oh boy. And we had to do that. We had to do the master first, and then there were everybody's close-ups and some tracking shots, and there were special effects in the scene. And after we did a couple takes, he just came over and he kind of leaned down and whispered in my ear and he said, I know you come from the theater. He said, movies are different. Just think it. And for anybody if anybody out there loves the musical of The Music Man, that's what the Music Man who shows up in the little town. He says he has this thing called the think method. You just think you can play the instrument and you will. And Toby said, it's like that. Just think those thoughts. Be right there. He said you don't have to worry about being loud or being to the balcony or making faces. He said just think your way through the scene the next time. And I said, "Oh." And he said, and the time when, and, he said, next we're going to do the close-up of your, they did all my close-ups at the end of the day. I guess they thought that would be helpful because I hadn't been on film ever. Well, all it was by the time we got to me doing my close-ups of that entire scene, I was, I was so tired. It was as if I was doing it for the first time. And Toby gave me that great advice, which was really helpful. And after that, he would always just sort of smile. And he said, "Well, you're from the theater, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "It's like being on stage and finding your light." And then I think he was the one who told me the famous story about, I guess it was Greta Garbo when all those years she was at MGM. She was such a professional. If she walked onto the set when they had already lit the set for the scene, um, she would be able to look up into the rafters and go, that light needs to go over 2 more feet. And that was kind of what Toby said. And that was that was the best advice ever.
You know, when you would talk to Toby, he was really low key, but he was always loaded with interesting things to say within
Mhm.
that low key sort of caricature
Yeah.
character he projected, I would say. And I really do think he was a great choice for that movie. I mean,
Yep.
so much has been made of that, and I think we're now at a point now where people just love to discuss things for the purposes of having the discussion. But I just think the guy was so intelligent.
Hmm.
He was so smart. And I think like when you do Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you have the Poltergeist Geist discussion, sometimes you forget how much of a contribution a guy like that actually offers. But I mean, and your role in the movie too, I looked at it the other day, and it's so important because you convey that real damage can be done in this house. I mean, you're the guy that gets bit, right?
Hmm.
How long were you in the makeup chair for that one?
That for the bite on my side,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was probably 3 or 4 hours. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You and Oliver Robbins, man, that scene, that is a very important scene for people who look at a movie and don't fully understand why you feel a certain way. This is one of those great filmmaking lessons where you come down in your bit and Robbins reacts. I mean, he probably
hmm.
did that reaction shot on a totally different day. I don't know. But
No, no, he
that
was
moment,
there. It was all in the
I mean,
same. It was all, no, he did it. Yeah,
it was just like all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, man, the presence, the evil force in this house is dangerous. And that's so key. That was such a key clutch moment. And I love that Spielberg gave it to you, man.
yeah, yeah. No,
Or
no, no.
Toby or the
Well,
writing structure gave it to you, I
if
guess.
you watched it recently, well, I was talking to a friend the other day, and now it's on Turner Classic Movies for the whole month of October, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere. And I haven't watched it in a couple years. What does Oliver say? Because we shot 5 different responses that he
So
said.
as I remember what I've seen, and it is
Yeah,
on TCM all month, where it belongs, honestly, at this point.
yes,
He says, "You got bit," and then
yeah,
they reveal it, and he's like, "Whoa!" Like he backpedals in fear, the way only Oliver Robbins can do it, you know.
yeah,
Um, and by the way, a real talented actor. Honestly, I think
yeah,
Robbins gets overlooked in the discussion, and he should not. He's really good in the movie, really
yeah.
incredible. Um,
But
but
there was a take. That when Steven was there, watching from the back, that he wanted to try, so he whispered something to Ollie. We called him Ollie because he was a kid then. Now he's Oliver. So, but Oliver, nobody knew what he was going to say, and Toby was like, "Okay, action!" And I ran down the stairs, and something bit me, and
yeah.
I pull up my shirt, and Oliver goes, "You got bit?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I pull up my shirt, and his response was, "Jaws." And everybody, we all tried not to laugh because we knew that was a little inside joke that I'm sure it exists somewhere on a blooper reel somewhere in a
Oh yeah, I mean that
Hollywood
would be
collection.
now they would deliberately get that for the contracted mandatory blooper reel for sure. And I'm
Exactly.
sure so that is in a vault somewhere. That's got to be on a Blu-ray by now, I would think,
It's
of
got
some
to be
sort.
somewhere. There's that's a whole nother conversation, Ethan, which is Oliver and I talk about this often. I used to talk about it with Jimmy Carron when he was alive. Um, that well, what was it? The 40th anniversary came out, what, 3 years ago, and
Uh,
they didn't ask any of us to do any talking, any narration, any interviews. I think they were still using some really weird video from 1981 from
huh.
Germany. And I have a friend who, for a long time, worked at Turner, and he tried to get any other information on the various re-releases, and they won't do it. And we don't know why. We both have theories about why. Probably because of the whole Spielberg Hooper sort of what the thing behind that. But we're one of the few big classic films that doesn't have, any recent updates.
Yeah, that's bizarre. The first thing that comes to mind as a possibility, I don't know if this is accurate, is they don't want to release anything that may show Spielberg giving someone an idea. Maybe for like DGA issues
Yeah,
or
it could be that. I mean, also
um,
because of the crazy, sorry for anybody out there who believes in the poltergeist curse, but it could be because
no.
of that. It's just Oliver and I we keep talking, and he's even, between the two of us, we reached out to some people at Warner Brothers and otherwise, and because although it was an MGM technically it's MGMUA, I think at that
Mm.
point. We get our residuals and things. Everything comes from Warner Brothers.
You
So
know, I would also venture to say that this is the answer nobody wants, but it's also probably a possible factor, is that people just aren't up on it. They don't know. We had that problem with our vault at Warner Brothers when I was there all the time. Like we had Duncan Henderson, the producer, he would walk over to our building and say, "What do you guys have in your vault that I can remake?" And and oftentimes you'd hear people, VP Bill Daly says this. He's like, "Well, we've got Titanic, we've got this, Poseidon Adventure." Some people would know and some people wouldn't. It's so I also, I don't know what the answer is there. I mean, I'd love to hear what your theories are. I don't know if you want to say that on the radio, but
yeah, I probably don't want to say anything, but it just seems odd, that's all. Because there's five or six of us that are around and able to do interviews
yeah,
and talks, but I think it's a kind of what is the radio I believe the phrase is radioactive. I think people just don't want to. I mean, it's 45 years ago almost.
right. And you
And
can't
you
make much. Look, a lot of people work on a movie and those people die.
yeah,
Some
yeah.
tragically. That's got nothing to do with a curse. James Karen, by the way, is was really good in that movie. You mentioned him
He
a
is
second ago.
so good. And he's another wonderful person that had, when I worked with him, I think he'd worked for, 50 years in films and he
Yeah,
just a million stories and was funny. And so was Zelda Rubinstein. I got to know her because I didn't have any scenes with her. I got to know her later on through friends that knew her in LA, and we got to run into each other and go to parties. And she was also
the
wonderful.
whole thing with Craig T. Nelson trying to answer her in his with his mind
Yes.
is such a perfectly timed comic relief moment.
The but the whole half the first almost the whole first half hour, I mean him pushing his stomach in and out,
Yeah,
them getting stoned on the bed, the kids all ending up in the bed because of the thunderstorm. I mean
yeah,
the and that unbelievable timing between Joe Beth uh and um and Carol Ann, when they have the little funeral for Tweety,
hmm,
and then she says, "Can I have a she says, can I have something now? Can I have a dog now?" Or something like that after they bury and just little details is what makes that film, which both Stephen and Toby, their movies were full of that. The fact that
yeah,
when the caterpillar or the digging tools come up in the backyard, and there's that close up of them digging up Tweety's grave, which
yeah,
sort of gives you a glance into what's going to come in the future. That kind of
yeah,
stuff. We had talked about Chinatown earlier, and a couple days ago there's a couple great books out about Chinatown and the making of it. And there's two things that if you are just watching the movie, it just looks like interesting material. But then when you see the whole movie and then you watch it for the second time, both of them involve Faye Dunaway. It's when she and Jack Nicholson, they're having a conversation and he says, "Oh, you've got something on your eye." And she says, "No, no, no. It's a flaw in the iris." And then there's another scene where she's talking and she just is exhausted and she leans her head down forward and she accidentally hits the horn of her very, very fancy car that she drives. Well, for anybody who's seen the movie, I'm gonna ruin it, okay? If you haven't seen it, at the end of the movie, she gets killed and she gets not only shot through her eye where the flaw was, but she falls forward and her head falls on the steering wheel. And Jack Nicholson is about 100 yards away and he sees the car she's in stop and he hears the horn. And I knew about the flaw in the iris moment since I saw it. I figured that one out. But I had never, and this book talked about the fact that she does that thing about halfway through the movie where she's so exhausted about something, she leans down and she hits the horn. And that kind of filmmaking, you don't get that anymore. That
right.
attention to detail, the layering of things. I mean, Raiders is full of stuff like that and great little jokes. Um, and yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I
that's
wish I was gonna say I wish they had that one scene that where I got to they flew me in the air. It's the scene where I go to open the door, but you don't even see, you just see me run upstairs and then you see me run back downstairs. They shot a whole sequence where I was on a flying rig and I opened the door to the kid's room and I flew about 5 or 6 feet up into the air. And then they had my t-shirt, my white shirt that I wore with my tie in the movie. They rigged it all with squibs that had Lux liquid
Really?
detergent in it, so that when I went up into the air and then Steven yelled 1, 2, 3, and then I would double over, and then and when they jerked me and they pulled me up, I had like not they were almost like teeth marks on my shirt and that looked like foam.
So this
So
is leading into the sequence where you show the evidence you've been bit. This is the
yes,
act of getting, yeah. That's
yes,
somewhere too.
that is somewhere. And I have a photo. I have a black and white photo of it, which Stephen was nice enough to send me. He had a really great reason why in the editing room they had to lose it was because that the wraparound what's going on down in the living room, that's the scene where Joe Beth has her most wonderful moment where she's so wonderful and there's that
Mm,
whoosh and she says, I felt her soul go through me. And Stephen, when he called to say that he was sorry that they had to cut it out, which I thought was really kind of him,
mhm.
um, he said we could not cut away from Joe Beth, and the time chronology wouldn't have made any sense if we had done it afterwards because she has that wonderful moment and then you run down the stairs and so. Yeah. That's why when I have friends who've been in entire films and got cut out. So I figure if they
Oh
cut
yeah.
my 3 little minute scene upstairs, I'm still in the rest of the movie for 45 minutes. So
Oh man, Mickey Rourke's still pissed about a thin red line.
oh yeah. Oh, and somebody else too. Was it Adrian Brody? There's
Yeah,
some
he's
other
yeah,
big famous
yeah.
actor that was in The Thin Red Line and he got cut out as well. So
Hey man, Malik, he's gonna do it his way. He doesn't owe you anything, as how he sees it. But you know what, man? Honestly, like you're right. All of this should be reconstituted in some sort of ceremonial re-release with the actors, and it is one of those films that Turner Classic Movies at their film festival should profile and engage with. And I think we can talk off air when you have more time about how we can maybe initiate that process. You've got important places to go, so we're going to do a part two. Real
okay.
quick before you sign off, though, give me the three movies that Martin's going to watch for Halloween. What do you got? Do
What
you
am I
watch
gonna watch?
Poltergeist on Halloween? Do you watch your own movie?
I don't. I
Do you have
don't.
it playing for the kids who happen to knock on your door and be like, "Hey, look at that good-looking dude. Who's that
No,
good-looking guy?"
it's funny that you asked that question. I lived in Jersey City. I lived in New York for 20 years, and then I lived in Jersey City before I moved back to LA, and now I live in Albuquerque. I every year, the 3 years that I was there, I dressed up, uh, and once again showing off my love of Chinatown. Where I lived in Jersey City is a really beautiful old neighborhood. They bus kids in because everybody decorates. We would get 2 to 3 thousand trick-or-treaters on
Mm,
Halloween. So we all dressed up. Everybody wore costumes. The very first time I did it, I was Jack Nicholson. I had this great like fedora hat. I had the Band-Aid on my nose with the blood. And the second year after that, I was um I was Heath Ledger in Brokeback Mountain. So I had a jacket, like a fur-lined jacket with jeans and boots, and I had a cowboy hat on, and I carried around a little plaid shirt. And the funny thing was, none of the kids had any idea who I was, but it was always the moms. For some reason, I know
moms
that
know.
movie
Moms know.
moms know, and like every other mom would go, "Oh, you're Heath Ledger in Brokeback Mountain." And I thought, yeah, yeah, that's who I am. Three movies on Halloween. You brought up The Thing. I'm not a big scary movie fan. They make me too anxious.
Makes
But
sense.
I think my favorite movie so far this year, and it's a horror film, is Sinners. I That movie just
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
blew me
Yeah.
away, and
Yeah.
it's a brilliant movie too. And if they don't, what's his name has got to win the Best Actor. I did not figure out for a half an hour that he was playing the two roles. I don't know why, but he's just astonishing. So I wanted to watch that again for Halloween. You talked about John Carpenter's The Thing. That's
Yeah,
actually one of the few horror films that I think I was in my 20s when that came out, and I actually had to close my eyes half the time, but I love that movie. I
yeah,
think
me
that
too.
movie's I think that movie's great. And there's a movie that came out that Amy Madigan's in that is this just came out this year. That's a
Oh,
horror
weapons.
film, Weapons, and it just popped up on my TV. Said it was free on HBO Max. So
Well, so
have you
you're going to
seen?
engage with a new one.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
going to get. No, no, they scare me too much. I can't. To be really, really honest, Ethan, I I almost I loved that first hour of Sinners, and as soon as
yeah,
that plot twist started arriving, and then the violence started, I thought, I'm not going to be able to watch this, and I almost got up, and then I said, no, 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 give it 5 more minutes, and within 5 minutes, I was like, I'm staying. This is the best movie I've seen all year. This is fantastic. So, and I'm
yeah.
a giant Ryan Coogler fan. So, my two favorite, well, one of my two favorite Marvel movies is Black Panther. So, yeah, Black Panther and Captain America. So,
Well, you get high marks for the recommendations. I'm with you on the thing. That's an actor's clinic, though. Those guys are
yeah.
so good in that
Oh,
movie.
and
Uh,
and Kurt
fantastic.
Russell, yeah, is
Yeah, I mean, how can
yeah,
you not like Kurt Russell? Honestly, in anything.
in anything.
It's
Great.
funny. We were watching another movie that was done at Warner Brothers real quick, Executive Decision, and there's a scene opposite Seagal, and we showed the clip here, and it kind of occurred to us like, you forget how good of an actor Kurt Russell is, and then you see him against Steven Seagal, and you realize he's fantastic.
He's a fantastic actor. Yeah. No, he's
He's fantastic.
and it's funny because I always have to preface things like, well, I haven't seen him in this amount of time, or I haven't worked with her for forever.
Hmm.
But Kurt Russell was he was a doll. You know, like
I
when people
bet.
say someone's a sweetheart, that's how he was. He
Yeah,
was just wonderful. And a guy that like eats with the crew and just yeah. He
gotta love it.
yeah. And I
Gotta. Yeah.
I'll
What
I'll
were you
end
gonna
with
say?
this little story. We'll end this chapter with a little story about on the last day we were shooting used cars, and Kurt knew I was driving back to LA, and we lived pretty close to each other, and he said, oh, Marty, Marty. He's just in that way, like, and I'm like, he's Kurt. I said to him once, I said, Kurt, when I was a kid, I said, and he's not much older than I am, but I said I was a kid. I loved all those Disney movies you were in, and he said, okay. He said, would you do me a favor? And I said, what? He said, I bought all this stuff. I forget who, I think it was maybe his wife was Susan Hubley then or whatever, and they had a kid, and he had like a 4-year-old, and he said, I bought all this stuff for my son, and I don't have any room, and I'm flying, and do you have room in your car? And I just thought, oh my God, there's that little side, even after we
Yeah,
work with all these people, there's that little thing inside, and I went, oh my gosh, Kurt Russell asked me to do him a favor, like, and he was so, oh, I know, I want you to have to go out of your way, and so I did it, and I just I said in the very beginning, it's the same with theater. When you work on films, you become a family.
that's
And
true.
and and that's how it is. So there you
I
go.
thought I thought you were gonna turn around and be like, "Oh, Kurt, I'm amazed you asked me," but no, I've got my
No,
own
I won't
stuff.
do it. No, 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 no. I did it for him, and and he
Uh,
was so grateful when
yeah.
I dropped that stuff off. So, little
Hey,
stories like that.
no, but those are the moments, right, between all
Yeah,
of us
that's
that
what
we
you
remember.
remember.
That that's why we're in this business, really, I think, is for the friendships. But fun fact, real quick on those Disney movies, they say Walt Disney, the last thing he ever wrote down the day before he went in the hospital was the name Kurt Russell on a note on his desk, which meant he was thinking of him either for a film or to tell him something or probably some free promo reel, knowing
Yeah,
Walt
yeah.
Disney, quite a horse trader,
Or you
Walt
wanted him to
Disney.
come to Disneyland and do some
Yeah,
appearance.
exactly, exactly.
So,
But that's what they say. So Kurt Russell, immortalized in more ways than one. Martin's got some great picks for Halloween. I'm with him on Sinners. I'm with him on The Thing. I don't know about Weapons. I haven't seen it yet. But also, I would say Poltergeist. And fun fact, real quick, exiting this, the film 1941. Whether you love it or don't love it, that is actually one of the more interesting historical moments. That is based on the Battle of Los Angeles, which
Right.
in itself is reason to go back and review the movie. I think that's kind of lost. That
Yeah.
is one of the craziest moments in
Yeah.
World War II.
And
So
it
maybe,
absolutely true. America,
yeah,
people in Los Angeles thought they were being invaded by the Japanese because there was a
that's right.
submarine in the harbor. So,
And
and there we
I
go.
can I have people who told me that they were kids then that saw evidence of an invasion, but I'll get into that our next show. We'll
Okay.
bring Martin back,
All
the
right.
legendary playwright, Martin Casella. Buddy, thank you.
Thanks.
Happy Halloween.
Okay. Happy Halloween. Thanks. Bye.
They come out of darkness, sometimes with thunder, sometimes with lightning. Their presence means death. The prison master was afraid of him. The guards were afraid of him. The town was afraid of him. Lucifer is coming for you. Rest easy, Jack Carr said in a low tone. You're in the final 30 seconds of your life. No quarter. No quarter. Kill all masters. Coming soon